Hi, I'm Melanie Cunningham. I'm with NAMI, Kentucky, and I just came out of another session. So I'm glad to be here in Kyle's session. So we'll go ahead and get started because we just have a half an hour and then we will break for lunch. So I want to introduce you to Kyle Mitchell. And I met Kyle when I first came to NAMI, Kentucky, and Kyle did the Ending the Silence training. So glad that he's actually going to be presenting at our conference a few years later. I think I met him in 2018. So Ending the Silence is one of our NAMI signature programs. It is a presenter program designed to talk about mental health with students, particularly middle and high school students. And so they have it set up for young people to talk about that so that the younger students can relate. So Kyle is going to talk to us about his presentation called Social Anxiety, the Pandemic That Needs a Louder Voice. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Kyle Mitchell.
Hello.
Hi, Kyle.
Hi, Melanie. Thank you for that amazing introduction.
Sure. Good to see you. It's been I think I met you in 2018.
Yeah, it feels like a long time ago. Anything before the pandemic was a long time ago.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We were doing trainings and in the hotels and having food and fellowship, and there were manuals and I would come by and drop off stuff. And so yeah, all of that's changed. We're virtual now and I don't get to see people. So this is exciting. So I see we've got quite a few people. We do have a NAMI Kentucky board member, Peter Taylor is here. So welcome, Peter. And we've got another board member, Melanie Sisson. Welcome, Melanie. She is also attending this class and they are NAMI Kentucky board members.
Awesome.
Yeah. Let me make sure there's not another one on there. No, there's some other people. Yes, but okay. All right. Well, Kyle, take it away. We want to hear your presentation, and then we have questions and answers at the end.
Awesome. Yeah, let's get into it. So yeah, I'm just gonna start kind of with my story with social anxiety and really just general mental health. And I'm gonna kind of dive a little bit into, what anxiety can look like and go over some examples and then get right into the good stuff, which is, what are some steps that we can do to help ease our anxiety and make us feel more socially confident. And I assume everyone can hear me well, right? I sound good, Melanie?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Before I get into it, I can't hear anything. So yeah, I'll jump right into it. So I can remember feeling my hands shaking, feeling just my heart beating out of my chest, feeling my palms just clamming up, feeling like there was like a heat wave over my body, because that's what it felt like when I transferred into this new school. So to give you a little bit of context, I grew up going to this really small private school with about 200 students in it. And then at the beginning of my sophomore year in high school, I transferred to this gigantic, enormous public school with about 1,600 students in it. So obviously this was quite the culture shock for me, and probably would be for most people. But on top of that, I'm going to a public school for the first time. So this is the first time that I ever rode a bus to school, the first time that I didn't have to wear uniforms. And also I knew nobody there. So I no longer had a crutch or any sort of support at school to help me when I was feeling anxious. And I quickly realized that at this new school, the bus dropped me off 40 minutes before my first class even started. So I didn't know what to do for 40 minutes. That petrified me. And personally, I wanted to just go hang out by myself, sit in the corner or in the hall. But I feared people would negatively judge me, wondering, oh, who's that loser over there? Or who's that kid over there has no friends? So I knew I had to come up with a plan. I wanted something to where I could blend in with everybody and I didn't have this attention that I thought I felt or that I felt I had all around me. So what I started to do was I started just walking the halls in circles every morning for 40 minutes. And I thought to myself, well, this will work great. Nobody's going to know what I'm doing. I'm just going to be able to blend in with everybody because this is basically kind of looking like an airport. And so I'm doing that for a while, and until one day somebody called me out in front of everybody on the way home from school on the bus and said, "Why do you walk the halls in circles every morning?" And I remember just having this feeling that we've all had at least once, where it feels like your heart just drops down into your stomach. And I just felt so embarrassed and ashamed and humiliated. And I knew the next day at school, I couldn't walk the halls anymore because everybody knew what I was doing and I was embarrassed. So from that day forward, I would go to school, I'd put my things up in my locker, and then I would go straight to the bathroom and I would sit in the bathroom stall and I would cry. And I'd have all these thoughts in my head like, "Kyle, why can't you do this, man? Why can't you talk to people? Why can't you make friends? Why aren't you normal like everybody else?" And that's what led me to my mission today, which is to help 1 million teens go from socially anxious to socially confident. Now, I want to invite you into my high school 15-year-old brain for a minute. So picture this. I did not know how to make friends. Now, don't get me wrong, I desperately wanted to make friends. Like I said, I didn't have any friends at this new school and I needed somebody, but I just did not know how to do this. And I can literally, no lie, remember sitting in my bed at night trying to think of strategies and plans and how I can make a friend the next day. And I even remember sitting there and thinking, well, maybe I just say hello to somebody. But then, that kind of made me nervous, a little anxious just to do that. So I thought, well, maybe I get a little bit more creative here. Why don't I ask to borrow a pencil? This will maybe get the conversation going and maybe something will come out of that. But then I thought to myself, well, if we start talking and maybe they're going to realize I came from a private school, are they going to think I'm a weirdo because of that? Or what if we start talking and they realize I don't have any friends here? Will they think I'm a loser? As you can probably tell so far, I struggled severely with social anxiety, and having little to no confidence was just a small byproduct of that. Now, think about this.
No, it's being recorded.
When it came to doing public speaking in school, or really anywhere, but of course school is where I did it the most, my mind would go anxiety overload. Now, for most people, public speaking makes them a little anxious, a little nervous. It is the number one fear in the world. But for me, it was just heightened to another level. So much so that, let's say I had a speech or a presentation to give in, one of the later classes of the day, I would do nothing that day except for think and worry about that speech all day long. Like I couldn't think about anything else. And when I finally did get to the class where I was supposed to speak, give a presentation, I would sit at my desk and I'd listen to the teacher and, figure out what position I'm speaking in. And I would sit there and just hope and pray to myself that, oh man, I hope the fire alarm goes off. Or, oh, I hope the person in front of me speaks too long and we won't have time to get to me today. Of course, this rarely ever happened. And eventually my name would get called and I would numbly walk up to the front of my class, turn around and see a sea of my classmates' eyes staring at me, expecting something great. And I knew it wasn't about to happen. And clearly my life was run by fear. Finally, here's one more for you. I thought people thought negative things about me, even though I had zero evidence to back it up, because it required zero evidence for me to feel like I was constantly being judged for how I acted, how I dressed, how I talked, even things as simple as how I walked down the hall or the street. It just felt like there was this giant spotlight on me at all times. Clearly, I had very little to no self-worth. And according to the NCSAS, 9.1% of teens struggle with social anxiety disorder. And according to the ADAA, 36% of those teens wait over a decade, 10 years, before ever asking for help. And that's why I say this is a different kind of pandemic. This is truly a silent pandemic. Now, I want to get right into what are some action steps that I took to help me increase my social confidence and that I continue to do, and some things that I've helped others do to be able to become more socially confident and ease their anxiety a little bit. So I'm going to get right into those 3 steps. So step number 1 is to shower yourself with self-love. Now, I know that may sound kind of foo-foo to some people, hopefully not in this room here, because we're all pretty tolerant of mental health, right? And self-love is a big part of your mental health. But I know it sounds like that to a lot of people, but it's really not. It's really just about learning to accept yourself as who you are and love the person that you are as this unique individual human being. And if you look at it, they've done studies and they show that if you use self-affirmations and you look at the MRIs of people, the MRIs of brain scans of people who use self-affirmations, that it actually increases their neural flow. It like increases neural expansions in the brain. And so there's lots of ways to practice self-love. Like I said, I'm going to focus more on the self-affirmations because that's really all the time that we have today. And like I said, this is my favorite way to practice self-love. And here's how I do it. So I'll usually wake up before everybody else in my house and I'll go grab my speaker and I will go into my bathroom and I'll start playing some music. Now, I don't play any kind of music. I play music that is really going to get me hyped up, like really get me jive, like get me jumping up and down a lot. And while that music's playing, I look into the mirror and I speak positive self-affirmations via I am statements. And I say it with emotion, which the emotion part is the biggest mistake that people make and forget about, because it's hard to train your brain with self-affirmations if you're just saying, I am confident, I am amazing. See how there's kind of like a lack of emotion. You can tell I don't believe when I'm saying it. But what the music helps me do is it helps me really get my emotion into it. And if I can get my emotion into what I'm saying and believe what I'm saying, or at least get my brain to think I believe it at this point in time, I can really train my brain to start rewiring. So instead of, I am confident, I am amazing, I love myself, I bring value everywhere I go, it looks more like this. Now, I don't usually do this sitting down, so it's a little different for me, but it's, I am amazing, I am confident, I love myself, I bring value everywhere I go. Today will be the best day of my life. I am in control of my day and I'm just going to roll through it. So you can see just that slight shift and difference there. You can tell the second time around, I believe a lot more of what I'm saying. An example I like to give is, the difference between a confident person and an unconfident person. The only difference is that the confident person just believes that they're confident. and the unconfident person doesn't believe it. So one way to kind of start to cultivate that belief in yourself, to love yourself more, is to use self-affirmations, via I am statements. Now, I don't know if this is something that we can do, Melanie, you can let me know, but I wanted to give you all the opportunity to maybe start putting this into practice now. Now, I don't mean turn on your video and start doing affirmations for me, but maybe think of one, I am self-affirmation. And if you would like to and are comfortable with doing so, if we could maybe put it in the chat of, what's an affirmation that you would start using this week. I think we're technologically able to do that.
Okay. Yeah, I'll start with myself, and then I'll move around the room here. Gosh, and this is something maybe I should practice too, because self-care and self-love is very important in mental health. Okay, gosh, it's hard to compliment yourself, isn't it?
And Melanie, we don't have to do it on camera. Like, we can just have people put it in the chat if you like.
Okay, well, everybody put it in the chat. Okay.
Yeah, I know we'd have a whole lot of time anyways.
Okay. Yeah, okay. It's hard to compliment yourself. Okay, I just came up with one.
It's a good uncomfortable challenge.
So everybody write one in the chat.
I am wonderful. There you go. Simple as that. That's a great one.
Yeah. I like that. I am enough. I am capable.
I am enough is a good one. Yes. Capable.
Anybody else?
Yeah, we'll keep going. I'm going to continue to ask for a little bit of participation, even if you can't think of anything, right on the spot. I know we're going kind of fast here. That's okay. As long as your brain is kind of jogging through, trying to think of different things. That's really all I want, is you all to start to get the snowball rolling so we can put it into practice, after we're done with today. Okay, so I'm going to be part of a great day. Love it. So, excuse me. Step 2, which is to find baby step uncomfortable challenges. Now, when I say uncomfortable challenges, what I'm talking about is something's going to make you a little bit anxious, a little bit nervous. Something's going to take you just a little bit outside that comfort zone. Now, what I mean by this, if you've ever heard the term, exposure therapy, that's what I'm talking about. Now, if you've never heard of exposure therapy or not super familiar, it's basically putting yourself in situations that typically make you a little anxious and, exposing your brain to those situations. And doing this in very small steps can help train your brain to not produce anxiety in those situations and feel more comfortable. So why do I say baby steps in this? I say that because we don't want to do something, so big and so far outside our comfort zone that it actually has a negative impact on our mental health and, how anxious we feel. We want to do something so small that we just feel it a little bit. Now, I know that you may be thinking, well, it's like sometimes we need to feel anxiety, and sometimes we don't. And I'll give a really quick example of that. So if I'm shopping with my kids and let's say I lose one of them, I want to feel anxious in that moment, because if I didn't, I would probably just, continue on shopping, and I would just say, well, I hope my 6-year-old finds me at the car in the parking lot. So I want to feel anxious at that moment. But for times that anxiety may come up that I don't necessarily need it to come up, because its purpose is to protect and keep me safe, is, for example, raising my hand in class. Now, I'm safe when I do this. I'm protected. I don't need anxiety at this moment, but my brain is sending signals that Kyle's in danger. We need to do something here. So I want to train my brain for those type of situations. to say, hey, anxiety, I'm safe, I'm protected. I don't need you right at this moment, but I appreciate you coming in. So what I started doing was these little baby step uncomfortable challenges. And my first ever one was to just raise my hand one time in every single class when I was in college. And so this really helped me. It was something that was achievable for me, but it wasn't, way too outside my comfort zone. So I started doing this, and I realized after about like 4, 5, 6 weeks that I started to feel a lot more comfortable and confident raising my hand while doing this. And I continue to do little challenges like this to just help, increase that comfort zone and get more and more outside of that, and to see, and really help increase my own social confidence. So, and I know this is a tough one and takes a minute, but if anybody, maybe I'm talking and you thought of one like right on the spot and you want to put it in the chat, by all means, go ahead and do that, because I'd love to see if anybody has anything. If not, not a big deal. I know this takes a little bit more thinking, but what's really cool about these is you start to see yourself build over time. So maybe, one day you do it, you don't really notice a whole lot. Maybe you've done it for a whole week and you're starting to feel it a little bit, but you keep doing this consistently over and over again. Like I said, I did this for like 4 or 5, 6 weeks, and I started to feel like, oh man, I actually feel confident doing this. And you can do all sorts of things. So I'll give examples, just a few more examples before we go on to step 3. But things as simple as like waving at a stranger, complimenting somebody at work, going and talking to the new kid at school or the new coworker that you have. Just little things that maybe you wouldn't do just because it makes you feel a little anxious, a little nervous, but just really putting yourself outside that comfort zone. Now, the cool part about doing that, and what led me to coming up with step 3, was that you get to reward yourself for doing this. Now, how we reward ourselves is we want to reward our efforts of these challenges and not the results, because we can only control our own efforts, and it only takes effort to go outside our comfort zone. And once we're outside that comfort zone and, we're doing these challenges, we can't control the results, which I know is kind of hard to do sometimes because our brains, we like to focus on the result, right? I mean, kind of just how we grow up, and we're in school, we get grades and we get those results, and we're focused on getting the A's, or we're focused on results at work, trying to get that, the next promotion or pay raise, whatever it may be. And that's why I like to reward myself for the effort I put out, to help train my brain to realize, oh, I'm focusing on the effort here. It doesn't matter about the result. So what really led me to coming up with this was when I started doing that hand raising challenge, and I was probably a few weeks in at this point, I started feeling a little confident. And I remember raising my hand to, ask a question, and I heard it, or I'm sorry, and I went to answer the question. I felt all the confidence in the world, and my professor was just telling me, nope, that's wrong. And I felt so embarrassed and ashamed. And then I remembered, wait, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to put out the effort. My challenge was not to, answer every question, right? I can't control that, but I can control that I just at least get my hand up there. So that is step 3. Now, just really quickly, just to end, I want to bring you back into my head today. So about 15 years later, I never thought I could speak publicly in front of people, and now this is what I do, and I actually love doing it. I never thought I'd have my own family. Now I'm married and have 3 kids, and I never thought I'd be helping people go from socially anxious to socially confident. I didn't think any of this was possible, and it wasn't, not until I started putting these steps into practice and doing them consistently and just really working on myself. And I'm not sharing all this just to say how great and wonderful Kyle Mitchell is, not at all. But I'm just sharing this to show you those things that you may be thinking about that you think you can achieve or you can't do because, you're too anxious, or, you struggle with depression from time to time, or whatever it may be, you can achieve those things. And if you can put in work into these steps and do them consistently, over time, you will see great results. And I look forward to seeing your results. So please let me know, what you get out of doing these steps. I know we have about 5 minutes here, so I went a little bit over, but still 5 minutes for question and answer. So if anybody has any questions, I would love to answer them. Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions? I know, I think my daughter, she doesn't have a diagnosis, but I do think she has anxiety. So one of the things I'm trying to get her into is something like a dance class or something like some activity, even whether she can do it, even if she's horrible at it, just to get her to try new things and to do new things, and not to have this anxiety about doing new things or meeting new friends. They were indoors a lot with COVID. And so all that socialization went out the window. And so I see new kids in the neighborhood and she's like, I can talk to them. I'm like, hey, you don't have to know them. That's how you get to know them. And just want to try some of the steps you were talking about with her to get her to open up and not be so timid. She's timid about some things, and other things she's not. But yeah, her anxiety.
How old is she?
She's 13.
Okay. So a challenging age for sure.
Yeah.
I know it can be hard to get them to actually do it. Well, what I recommend, because I know teenagers, or especially coming from the parent and trying to get them to do something, is I always tell parents, and I always try to do this for my kids too, although they're not teenagers yet, thankfully. But as I try to tell them, lead by example. I want parents to do this too. And so don't say, what's an uncomfortable challenge you can do. Start telling them things that you're doing that make you feel uncomfortable, or start telling them when you start to feel anxious about things. Earlier this week, I was speaking at a school and I was trying out this new small group project. And I was feeling anxious about it because I didn't know exactly how it was going to go. And I was holding it in for a second. My daughter was sitting there and I was like, no, I need to tell her. So I told her, I said, Evelyn, I feel anxious about going to the school this morning. And she was like, why? So I told her why. And she's like, Daddy, just go have fun with it. And I was like, I love you. This has been helpful. This is helpful for everyone. Thank you. Thank you all for the kind words. I appreciate it. And yes, this is helpful for everyone. I do focus on teens, but these steps can work no matter what age you are. Like I said, I still do it. I'm not a teenager, although I kind of look like one, I've been told.
Yeah. Are you doing the end in the silence in the schools? I know you're in on the border of Indiana and Louisville.
I haven't had the opportunity to actually do an ending the silence. I know you reached out to me about doing one in Lexington. We couldn't do it just because of the travel and all that. But no, I haven't had the opportunity to do one here in Southern Indiana now.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm still growing up with this anxiety thing. It's good for children to know what's going on. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's the biggest reason to tell, especially with your kids and really just anybody around you, your personal support circle, really share, how you actually feel. It's so much harder to deal with this stuff when you're just holding it all inside. And I've been one to do that in the past, and it's not fun. I still occasionally get wrapped into doing it, but yeah, and just sharing with your kids and letting them know, like, hey, you're not alone. Like, I feel this way too.
Yeah, does anybody else have any more questions before we break for lunch? We've got an hour lunch, then we'll come back at 1. Okay, well, Kyle, thank you for your Ending the Silence presentation with us. And oh yeah, Peter's got down exercise or regular physical activity is and then it cuts off.
I'm sorry. I'm typing too hard with one finger. Depression and anxiety statistically are the most frequent kinds of mental health problems that people have. Mm-hmm. Maybe like 20% of people in a year have some symptoms of it. And physical activity and exercise is the evidence suggests it's the most effective intervention for it, for the most people. I mean, it doesn't work for every person in every case, but generally it works the best for anxiety and depression both. It gives the most consistent and the most long-lasting relief from it. Just, wow. People don't move around enough.
Gotcha. Julie has a question too. Thank you, Peter. She says, how can I be a better and more supportive parent, maybe to a child that has anxiety?
Sure. So the biggest thing I would say is listen to your kids. I know it sounds kind of plain and simple, but listen and don't try to give advice. Just validate their feelings, their emotions, what they're going through, no matter how what's the right word? No matter how kind of like bizarre it may seem to you, or incomprehensible, like, because maybe you never struggled with anxiety like your child has, but just really validate and let them know that you're here for them whenever you need them. But I can't stress enough, don't give advice unless they ask for it. That is a common mistake that I see that just kind of turns really not just kids, but really just anybody off. Because that's not what people are looking for, unless they specifically ask for it. But most people, when they're coming to talk to you and they want support, they're not looking for advice. They're just wanting to open up and share with you, and they want you just to listen. So that is your job, is to listen. And if they're not opening up a whole lot to you and you're wanting to be more supportive, then do what I said earlier. Start talking to them, be more open with them about how you feel and what you're going through. Let them know when you feel anxious and stuff like that. So like Melanie said, so they know they're not alone. And also so they can be more encouraged to open up back to you, because you're starting to build that trust with them, and they'll feel like they're more able to open up to you and, let you know more about, stuff that's going on in school, how they're feeling on a day-to-day basis. And, it's not going to happen overnight, but as nothing does, but just keeping at it, staying consistent with it. And I would say that's my number one piece of advice for that.
Thank you so much, Kyle.
Thank you, Melanie. I really enjoyed this
again after a couple of years. So all right, well, we'll end, and again, thank you. And if anybody has any questions, Kyle, can you put in the chat? Kyle do you have a support group, or you do something with, it's Kyle, what is that about? Don't you do a support group or something?
No, I don't do any sort of support group at this time. I mean, I do some one-on-one coaching, and I do speaking and stuff. But if you want to learn more about me, I'll put my website up,
sure,
in the chat, which is socialanxietykyle.com. You can learn a little bit more about what I do and just browse on there.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Kyle. And we'll see everybody back at 1:00 for our afternoon sessions.
All right. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Have a good lunch.
You too.